You're listening to Enzy Unlimited, where we discuss all things performance. Each week, we'll bring you sharp and engaging episodes covering all things sports science and sports nutrition. This will help you fuel up and train smarter. Tune in for actionable insights that will keep you at the top of your game.
Enzy Unlimited is proud to be powered by TeamBuildr.
TeamBuildr is the software for performance coaches around the world. Their powerhouse software increases efficiency, saves paper, and can handle any type of programming. It is the perfect fit for performance facilities and remote performance coaching. TeamBuildr is full of tools that performance coaches need, allowing them to create and sell programs online, provide nutrition information through PDF documents, and gather wellness questionnaire data to stay on top of how their athletes are feeling. It contains multiple tracking methods, 16 plus reports, evaluation testing, and goal setting, just to name a few. Head to teambuildr.com and sign up with your code Enzy to start your 14-day free trial. Welcome back to Enzy Unlimited with Nick and Em. Today we're going to talk about one of our integrated performance clients' case studies who recently played in the Australian Rugby Shield. So Em, why don't you take us through the nutritional strategies that you implemented for this client and how and why you did so?
Amazing. Thank you, Nick, and welcome back, guys. So if you tuned in to our last episode where we spoke about the off-season setting you up for success, this is a perfect example of how when you work with your nutritionist and your strength and conditioning coach for a long period of time, you can get really good results and we get a really good understanding of how you are as an athlete and what we need to do to help you perform at your peak. So essentially with this client, we really wanted to focus on building up her energy intake in the off season to ensure that she was meeting her optimal energy availability. Now, this is a very active athlete. You could call her a hybrid. She does a few different styles of training and she has quite an active job as well. So we really wanted to start to shift the mindset and really facilitate a healthy relationship with food. Because this athlete has been in the gym for a long period of time, she, I suppose, had that little bit of a mindset towards eating kind of like your bro food or your nutrition for like aesthetics, right? So as an athlete with really high energy demands, we needed to start to introduce some more ultra processed food. So this was going to make it a lot easier for her to get her energy in without feeling overly full or like she was eating all day. Because when you're upwards of, around 3,000 calories plus, if you're eating salads, rice cakes, lean meats with just veggies and volume kind of foods, it becomes really hard to meet these demands and you do feel sick, you feel sluggish, you feel bloated, and this is going to transfer into your performance on the field as well. So this gave us a really great opportunity to also start to trial and test her processed foods in and around different training times. So as my athlete here was doing off-feet conditioning, field sessions, there was a phase where she was doing runs, obviously her strength training in the gym, her weekend games as well, because we worked together all through the off-season and then into her next season. We had plenty of time to trial and test things. So we could trial and test different carbohydrates before different kinds of trainings that she was doing, because different training when you eat different kinds of carbohydrates, the different planes of movements and so forth, some you may feel a little bit more sick if you have a more heavy kind of simple carbohydrates. I think if you're going for a long run and you have something like a bagel, it's really heavy. It's going to take a little bit longer to digest, even though it's still a simple carbohydrate. There's some protein in there. There's a little bit more fiber as compared to, say, like an energy gel or some lolly. So we could trial different things around different training times, which was really, really helpful. And essentially gave us the opportunity to also train the gut to handle more foods, more fluids in and around training, which we could then utilize on game days as well. So one other thing that we were able to trial and test is a fuel up day. So Nick, have you heard of carbohydrate loading before?
Yes, I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yep. Have you, so obviously when you played league, and I know that you had a dietitian that you worked with, did you ever do a carb loading protocol?
Yeah, I did personally. I've always been a fan of the carb load kind of system. As you know, it's something that I've utilized with all different types of competitions that you've helped me with as well. But yeah, I'm one of those athletes and now one of those coaches that are very superstitious and very, like a lot of the things that I do have to stay the same. If I find something that works, and I, say like I had a certain dinner or I had a certain breakfast or I wore a certain pair of undies or socks, or if I sat in a certain spot before the game, if then I win or play well during that game, that then becomes a thing that I do all of the time. Because then if I don't do it and I don't win, that then it leads into that bias of like, well, I won because I did this thing and then I lost because I didn't do this thing. And we see that a lot with athletes. So I guess that's a long way of saying, yes, I did do a carb up protocol, but a lot of it was just like, a pizza and a bowl of spaghetti the night before, because when I did that a couple of times I won. So then I just did it all of the time.
Yeah. And just a little sidetrack here before we go back to the carb load. This weekend you were coaching in a grand final for the Pickers, and you had that same superstition with your cones.
Yes. Yeah. I do. I have it with everything. I take a certain route to the field, and it might not necessarily be the way that I drive to the field for training days, but on game days I drive this way to the field. I used a certain set of cones during the warm up for the first game and they won, and then I said, oh, well, I have to use them for the second game, and then the second game that team won. So then I was like, there's no way I'm changing those cones. And that they did get taken and used for something else, but there was no way I was using a different set, so I had to go and hunt for them and find them because, as athletes, that I feel like that's something that's really ingrained in us, and I think it's something that maybe you not necessarily growing up playing a lot of sport and not being involved in that. It's maybe not something that you have in you. And I think it's something that you're slowly learning with working with athletes and working with myself, is like, there's a lot of these things that we do that aren't necessarily rooted in science or don't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, but we just do them because if we don't, it doesn't feel good.
Like the pickle juice.
Juice. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny, that cone story. I do like that. Anyway, back to the carb loading. So like you said, a lot of athletes think that a carb loading is just like a big bowl of pasta or pizza or something like that the night before. However, a carb load is actually somewhere around 8 to 12 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight for about 36 to 48 hours before you play or compete. So that's going to super compensate your glycogen stores and ensure you have plenty of energy reserves. Now, a bowl of pasta or pizza does not cut it. It doesn't go anywhere near the amount of carbohydrates that you need. So when you're powerlifting and you did a carb load, you're about 140 kilos. Quick math in my head, let's say we did 10 grams per kilogram of body weight. That's like 1,400 grams of carbs that you had to eat.
Yes. So the carb loads that I did pre-football, a long time ago were literally, like you said, a pizza and a bowl of pasta the night before, quote unquote carb load. And then in contrast to the carb load that you put me through, that was a true carb load based on body weight and carbohydrates grams per body weight, and for a certain amount of hours to super compensate those stores. Vastly different, but I can tell you, as uncomfortable as that was in the lead up doing the thing, we did it in a way where it was very manageable. But the reason I loved it so much and continued to do that, every time that I competed post doing that, was I have never felt better than when I did that properly. It made a huge difference to how I felt and then subsequently how I performed.
Absolutely. It makes a huge difference. And the reason why it was so manageable for Nick as well is because we built his tolerance. So we actually gradually trained the gut the week leading into the carb load, so he could handle that large amount of carbohydrates without feeling sick, and familiarize him with those foods as well. So that's exactly what we did for this athlete here. Even though we didn't do a full-on carb load, I call it a fuel up or a mini carb load, where we just go one day before the game and we do about 8 to 10 grams per kilogram of body weight. And then we do utilize some game day nutrition strategies as well, big breakfast and food leading into the game, but we have maximized glycogen and there's plenty of energy reserves. Now, this was really important because this athlete has gone to camp, she's smashing it, but the food provided is very little. There's 3 meals a day, some have no carbohydrates. Literally, there's like a naked burger, which means a burger without the bun. So we've packed bread rolls to take on the side. We've got heaps of ultra-processed foods that she's utilising. And they have the typical big bowl of pasta and some garlic bread for dinner. So we fueled her up the day before, and then we're just making sure that she's consuming about 6 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight per day to ensure that she's got plenty of energy for every single game that she'll be playing and recovers in between.
Awesome. Yeah. Is there anything else here that you wanted to chat about in terms of the nutrition that we did, that you took care of for this athlete in this case study, in this situation?
I've pretty much covered everything briefly, but if you guys really like this information, if you are going away to a camp and there's limited food or anything like that, please reach out. I can go way more in depth in a future episode. I could talk about this over an hour. There's so much that we've done, but pretty much trialing and testing things in the off season, just like we spoke about in our previous potty, and really just utilizing ultra processed foods in times like this where the athlete is going away. There's lack of refrigeration, there's lack of cooking facilities, there's food provided. There's no way in the world that you can take, rice and cook your rice, your chicken, making, your breakfast oats or anything along those lines. So if we can utilize shelf stable ultra processed food, so even think Nutri-Grains, little long life milks, Up and Go, energizers, which are quite high in protein, Cliff Bars, Lucozade Energies, which give you about 60 grams of carbohydrates per little 380 ml bottle. Being okay with eating these ultra processed foods is a really important tool to have in your toolbox as an athlete.
Yeah, and I think being prepared, I think, is the big message here as well.
Yes.
Especially when we're looking at athletes that go away from home. And most athletes, when you get to a certain level, are not playing 10 minutes from your kitchen every week. There's going to be travel involved in sport, and that's the nature of sport at a high level. And while travel is fun, there also needs to be a certain level of, organization and onus put on the athlete to make sure that they have everything required to perform at their best. You're not going to go away to an Australian Rugby Shield camp without taking your training gear.
No.
Without taking your boots, without taking your mouth guard, et cetera, because those are things that you need to do to play at your best, or they're things that you need to have prepared prior to leaving to play at your best. And nutrition is also one of those things that you need to plan in advance and make sure that you're going to have the things required for you to be able to perform at your best while you're not at home.
Absolutely. So make sure when you're packing your boots, you're packing your lolly snakes and your Gatorades too.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about what you've done with our athlete to get her ready utilising strength and conditioning, and I suppose building her capacity for fitness. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so originally this athlete was only working with yourself on the nutrition side, and this athlete also competes in strongman, in strongwoman. So has a strongman coach that looks after all of the strength training from that perspective, and was getting nutrition for yourself. Once also playing local rugby and also local rugby league on the weekends. Once his athlete was selected in the Australian Rugby Shield, she also reached out to us to level up her coaching to include S&C work from myself alongside the strength work that she was and is still currently getting from her strongman coach. So what this looks like is, and I think this is a really good example of coaches working side by side to not only just you and myself, but also myself and the strength coach in working to create a total athlete. So I'm a firm believer that there is such thing as strong enough for your sport, okay? Being strong is very, very important, but you can be strong enough, okay? There becomes a certain point where if you're not a strength athlete where your sport is expressing strength and nothing else, i.e. strongman, powerlifting, Olympic lifting as well to a certain degree. If you're not in a strength sport, if you're in a sport that requires other physical qualities to be expressed to be good at your sport, you can be strong enough, and then there becomes a point where the strength then comes with diminishing returns. So if I squat 160 kilos, I'm going to be really strong, and I'm going to potentially be stronger than my competitors. But if I can squat 180 kilos, 190, 250, 300, that's not necessarily going to make me a better athlete beyond being strong enough. So when this athlete came to me, she was strong enough for her sport. She needed to work on transferring that strength to the field and to transferring that top end strength that she had into more explosive movements, into more sport-specific movements, and then also building her capacity, her engine, her endurance, her speed, and her agility. Okay, so what we did, I mentioned earlier in this podcast that not only was she doing strongman and prepping for a strongman competition, she also played 2 games of rugby, a game of rugby and a game of rugby league every weekend. So not only did we have a game day plus minus scenario in terms of how we programmed for her physical development, we had 2 games each weekend plus her strongman training every week, which was really ramping up to be maximal effort stuff because she, as soon as she gets back from this Rugby Shield, has a strongman competition. So she was in a peaking phase for that, which means that things were getting hard and heavy. A lot of fatigue comes with that. So predominantly her conditioning was done off feet to manage the ground contacts because she was getting a lot of ground contacts during the 2 games that she played. She was incurring a lot of joint actions during those games and the strongman training. So we utilized a lot of isometrics in the gym to build strength at specific joint angles, strength and resiliency at those joint angles, which then allowed us to focus on doing some dynamic effort work, some plyometric work, and some speed exposures during the week. Low dosage, really high intensity, building strength, building resiliency, building speed, working on off-feet conditioning to build capacity and change of direction stuff as well in the field. So this was all done in conjunction with a strength coach, in conjunction with rugby coaches playing on the weekend and yourself as a nutritionist. So essentially we kind of looked at, I looked at what she was doing during the week. I looked at what exposures she was getting from a physical standpoint. I jotted those down, and then I backfilled, I built out a plan of like where we wanted to get to, what was the end destination that we wanted, and the goal was to be fitter and to be faster and to be able to change direction a little bit better, and to express the strength that she has in a more dynamic and explosive manner. That was the end goal. This is where we were. These are all of the little, I guess, bumps in the road along the way, being the games and the strongman training, and these are what we have to navigate around. And then once we had these 2 end pillars, I was then able to build a plan that took into consideration all of these things. We spoke at the start of every week post games. She gave me feedback, and I guess, and I've spoke on previous podcasts and done posts on Instagram around the thought that the standard periodization model, I guess, is probably a little outdated. And what I mean by that is I didn't say we've got 6 months to achieve this goal, so we're going to do 2 months of this, 2 months of this, 2 months of this, and 2 months of this, because there was so much chaos happening in her world from week to week that really did kind of guide the training decisions that I needed to make from week to week. So it was more so a matter of, let's talk every week. Let's see how you're feeling. Let's give me a rundown of the exposures that you had in these areas last week from the other training that you were doing and the games that you played. How's your body feeling? Let's do a little bit of an assessment. Okay, here's the exposures that I want you to get in these buckets this week. And then we'll touch base again next week and throughout the week and see how we're traveling. And we've ended up in a really good spot with some really positive feedback. First game was played, crushed it, massive meters, really solid performance that actually led her to gain a starting spot in the second game off the back of that performance. So, really pleased with how it's all come together.
Yeah, amazing. And, that's such a valid point. Life is so chaotic, so it's really important to be able to adapt and manipulate things around the chaos of life. So we're really proud of you. We're so stoked to be on your team, and thank you everyone for chiming in and listening to this episode.
If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, leave us a positive review or a comment, and share to your socials and tag us.
Your support means the world to us, and showing your support through these actions really helps us grow. Thank you so much for tuning in today, guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.